This is Sinai and Torah, or Law, Part 2. Let's look a little bit at the format of both Hammurabi's Code and Exodus. This is the case of the goring ox. In Hammurabi, the case is presented that this is a habitual goring ox. If an ox be a goring ox, and it is shown that he is a gorer, and he does not bind his horns or fasten the ox up, and the ox gore a freeborn man and kill him, the owner shall pay 1/2 a mina in money. The format, or the way that the law is set out, is similar in Exodus. If an ox gores a man or a woman to death, the ox shall be stoned, and its flesh shall not be eaten, but the owner of the ox shall be clear. But if the ox has been accustomed to a gore in the past, and its owner has been warned but has not kept it in, and it kills a man or a woman, the ox shall be stoned, and its owner also shall be put to death. This latter is a harsher penalty than what happens in Hammurabi, but the actual format, the way these are stated, is very similar. You have if such and such happens, and these are the conditions, then this is the penalty. It is interesting to note what kinds of things bring about the death penalty in both Hammurabi and Exodus. The kinds of things that are capital crimes in Hammurabi are things like false accusation, theft from a temple or palace, theft or receiving stolen property, breaking and entering, kidnapping, aiding an escaped slave, aiding criminals or conspirators, negligence, some sexual crimes, and sometimes there is what is called vicarious capital punishment. In other words, the punishment does not happen to the one who does the wrong, but rather to someone who is a close relative. So, for example, if a wilu is generally considered to be a freeborn person. If a wilu strikes a freeborn woman so that she lose her unborn child, he shall pay 10 shekels for her loss. If the woman die, his daughter shall be put to death. The same with a house that is shoddily built. If the builder falls down and kills its owner, then the builder shall be put to death. If it kills the son of the owner, the son of the builder shall be put to death, etc. The capital crimes in Exodus are things like intentional homicide, kidnapping, striking or cursing one's parent, some sexual crimes, sacrificing to other gods, and sorcery. You see some similarities and some differences. There are a number of laws regarding injury and accidental death in Hammurabi. If a son strike his father, his hands shall be hewn off. Recall just in the last slide that a similar act in Exodus would require the death penalty. If an awilu, that is a freeborn person, put out the eye of another freeborn person, his eye shall be put out. This is an eye for an eye, basically. If he break another awilu's bone, his bone shall be broken. If he put out the eye of a commoner, or break the bone of a commoner, he shall pay 1 gold mina. In other words, the penalty is harshest when it is done against one who is equivalent in status. There's also a law, if an awilu knock out the teeth of his equal, his teeth shall be knocked out, a tooth for a tooth. So here, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth is the penalty if one does the injury to one's equal. In Exodus also, there are laws regarding injury and death. Here's a little bit different. Whoever strikes a man so that he dies shall be put to death. But if he did not lie in wait for him, but God let him fall into his hand, then I will appoint for you a place to which he may flee. But if a man willfully attacks another to kill him treacherously, you shall take him from my altar that he may die. So this is sort of the equivalent in our own society of, say, first degree murder and manslaughter. First degree murder requires the death penalty. Manslaughter or accidental death, the person may flee and not receive punishment. These places in other biblical passages are called the cities of refuge. They were the places to which one could flee if one brought about a death by accident or without malice. And the passages in Numbers and Deuteronomy and Joshua set aside specific cities. And the practice seems to be to limit the practice of blood vengeance. We saw in our video on the Redeemer that the Redeemer has a responsibility to avenge the death of a family member. If an unintentional killer sought refuge in one of the cities, the congregation was to rescue the person from the avenger of blood and restore him to the city of refuge, where he needed to stay until the death of the high priest. In Numbers, the intent of the cities of refuge seemed to be to prevent the pollution of the land by keeping the accidental killer within a circumscribed space. In Deuteronomy, it seems to be to prevent the killing of innocent blood, that is, the blood of the accidental killer. So, in our own terms today, there are various different penalties for first-degree murder or premeditated murder, second-degree murder, which is, like one gets into some kind of dispute and has not come with the intent of killing but ends up killing the person. And then there's accidental death. All of those are also still dealt with in our current law. When men quarrel and one strikes the other with a stone or with his fist, and the man does not die but keeps his bed, then if the man rises again and walks abroad with his staff, he that struck him shall be clear. Only he shall pay for the loss of his time and shall have him thoroughly healed. Here it is, getting into a fight, injuring somebody in that fight, then there is no penalty except the person who caused the injury is supposed to compensate the person who is injured. This is often dealt with in our own time in terms of private lawsuits. When men strive together and hurt a woman with child, so that there is a miscarriage, and yet no harm follows, presumably to the woman, the one who hurt her shall be fined, according as the woman's husband shall lay upon him, and he shall pay as the judges determine. But if any harm comes to the woman, then you shall give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. Now, the way we usually think of this is that there is revenge occurring. However, usually this is in a judicial situation, and the intent here is that the punishment fit the crime. One may not exact a penalty that is worse than the injury. So it's not that there is revenge, but rather the penalty equals the injury.